Hello and welcome to the Sana Psychological Podcast, your safe space for connection, healing, and growth. Each episode, our experienced clinicians and special guests will share strategies, stories, and resources to support your unique path to well-being. Because at Sana, your mental health matters. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sana Psychological Podcast. I'm your host, Paige Abbott. Today, we're talking about something that many people experience, but few people know the name for. Maybe you felt it yourself. You wake up, you go through the motions, you do the things you're supposed to do. Nothing is necessarily wrong. Your life might even look objectively really good from the outside, but somehow everything feels flat. The things that used to excite you don't hit in the same way. Your favorite foods taste ordinary. Your hobbies feel like chores. You're not exactly sad. You're not in crisis. You're just meh. If that sounds familiar, today's episode is for you. We're going to be talking about something called anhedonia, what it is, why it happens, how it's connected to mental health, and perhaps more importantly, what to do and how to move through when the joy feels like it's out of reach because of this. So I wonder how many of you have heard of this experience of anhedonia. If you haven't, that's okay. It's not a phrase that's commonly known or understood. I find in therapy sessions, having many conversations about anhedonia, just explaining the concept and introducing it to people. So let's start today with the fundamentals. Basically, anhedonia is our reduced ability, or sometimes complete inability, to experience pleasure. The word comes from Greek roots that literally mean without pleasure. So it's not boredom, it's not laziness, it's not being ungrateful, and it's not a choice. It's a genuine psychological and neurological experience where activities that normally would produce enjoyment, satisfaction, or excitement simply don't generate that same response. People often describe it as, I know I should enjoy this, but I don't. Or I remember what happiness felt like, but I can't seem to access it anymore. Or nothing sounds good. Everything feels flat. That last one is particularly common. It's this feeling of this flatness where nothing sounds that exciting or worth the effort or rewarding. And when pleasure disappears, our motivation to keep living, keep acting, often disappears right along with it. Because motivation isn't powered by discipline alone, it's powered by anticipation. So when the brain stops expecting anything good to come out of things, everything becomes that much harder. To keep understanding anhedonia, it helps to understand a little bit more about the brain. So our brains have what's often called our reward system or our reward circuitry. This is a complicated system that involves interconnected regions and neurotransmitters, including the neurotransmitter of dopamine. Now, dopamine is often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical, but it's quite complicated than that. Dopamine is heavily involved in motivation, learning, anticipation, and also the pursuit of reward, not just the experience of pleasure when we do something that we like. So the dopamine part of the reward system cues us into something that seems worth doing. And when this reward system becomes disrupted, people may stop feeling excited about things that once felt meaningful. So the reward is still there intellectually, but emotionally, it doesn't register in the same way. So this is what anhedonia can feel like, where there's just this feeling of emptiness, of disconnect, of a lack of pleasure and fulfillment from whatever it is that we're doing. One of the more common places that we see anhedonia pop up is in the experience of depression. And I want to be clear, if you are experiencing anhedonia or if you have experienced it before, this is not your hallmark indicator that you are or have been experiencing depression, but it is a place where it can show up. Anhedonia can also show up in addiction. It's often quite associated with the withdrawal phase of coming out of substance or behavior use, where our brains are recalibrating and getting used to the different normal. So, anhedonia can show up there as well. And it can be associated in other mental health conditions, but those two are usually the most common ones where it will show up. But it could also come from other medical conditions. So if this is something that you're experiencing, it would definitely be worth checking out and exploring further with a physician as well as a mental health practitioner to explore the roots or the cause of this for you in your particular context. So, coming back to anhedonia and depression, most people assume that depression is hallmarked by an experience of sadness. But for some people, depression isn't about sadness at all. It's more about that emotional numbness, emptiness, disconnection, which is what we would describe as anhedonia. So there's that flatness where depression, because it affects the brain's reward pathways, activities that once felt pleasurable stop generating the same response. Similarly, in addiction and withdrawal, many addictive substances and behaviors directly affect the brain's reward circuitry. So, as we keep consuming these substances and behaviors, our brain adapts and learns to expect more intense experiences. So, when people start to move away from that or don't provide that to their brain because we can't be using a substance or a behavior continuously, there is now going to be that dip. And when withdrawal is happening, it is very common that people will experience that sense of flatness, numbness, disconnect. People often worry that this is going to last forever. And of course, it's not. It's just an indicator of the temporary nature of withdrawal, but it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable. And so this can be a propeller for people to go back to substances or unhelpful behaviors because they worry that this anhedonia and this flatness is going to last forever. Other conditions that it can appear with include post-traumatic stress disorder. It can show up in burnout. It can be part of bipolar disorder. It can be present in anxiety disorders, particularly when chronic stress keeps the nervous system in a state of survival mode. It may occur in schizophrenia and other psychiatric conditions. And sometimes it can accompany chronic illnesses, persistent pain, sleep deprivation, grief, prolonged stress, and may be connected with physical health conditions as well. So as you can see, anhedonia is not a diagnosis. If the symptoms are there, it's not a clear indicator of what might be going on for you, but it's a signal, it's a clue, it's a symptom telling us that something bigger or deeper may be happening within the brain, the body, and our emotional system. So it's something that we definitely want to pay attention to because being caught in that phase of anhedonia, of course, is extremely uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, and people just want to move through that as quickly as possible. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when experiencing anhedonia is constantly checking with themselves whether they feel better. They watch themselves all day. Do I feel joy yet? Do I feel excited yet? Is this working? Am I broken? Asking ourselves all of these questions. The problem is that pleasure rarely returns on command. It's kind of like falling asleep. The more you try and force it, the more elusive it becomes. So many people become trapped in this cycle of monitoring, evaluating, and searching for the thing or the things that are going to bring these feelings back that aren't currently available. Ironically, this often creates more frustration and more suffering and can also open up more risk because now people are more likely to go back to behaviors or substances or things that really aren't what we want to be putting into our system to create that natural reward response. But the brain and the person is just trying to find something that will have some effect. So, how do we live healthily through anhedonia? That's the path that I would not recommend that you turn down if you can avoid it. If we're looking for that artificial inflation of pleasure from external substances or behaviors, that can just take on a life of its own and create a lot of problems for itself. I understand, though, of course, wanting to feel better. So, what actually helps? Well, the first thing is to understand that pleasure and meaning are not identical. So even when pleasure disappears, meaning can remain. So, what that means is you may not enjoy your morning walk in the same way as you used to or the same way that you want to. You may not feel excited about seeing friends or being connected in the ways that you used to, but these activities still matter. They continue to engage us with meaningful actions that creates the conditions for recovery. So think of it like physical therapy. You don't wait until your muscles are strong before exercising them again. You exercise them so that they can become strong again. So, the same principle often applies to our emotional life. So, essentially, what I'm trying to convey is the importance of doing the things that eventually you would like to re experience pleasure from. But doing them now, recognizing that there may not be that same subjective experience of pleasure, and to try to be okay with that. Being okay with it doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean that you have to be okay to sit with it forever, but okay in the sense that you know you're providing the structure and the framework for yourself in order to heal and in order to shift this experience. Another important strategy is to lower and reduce the expectations that you have for yourself and for your feelings. So instead of expecting joy, maybe you can aim for participation. Instead of excitement, maybe you can aim for engagement. Instead of happiness, maybe you can aim for showing up and giving yourself a pat on the back for that. So the goal isn't to force yourself to feel amazing. The goal is to remain connected to life while your nervous system and while your brain heals. And sometimes recovery begins with very small victories. Making breakfast, taking a shower, going outside for 10 minutes, sending a message to somebody, listening to a song. I recently saw that music may be a really helpful gateway to start to reconnect our brains to this sense of pleasure. The data is a little bit mixed. It was hard to get an accurate read on how effective this was, but the researchers concluded that because music is low risk and doesn't have much potential to open up harm for people, that maybe listening to music to just start to set yourself up for your brain to experience a type of connection, feelings, pleasure again, may be a really helpful tool. So even just listening to music, again, not with the expectation you're going to feel immediately different or that it's going to be the magical tool, but just sitting in it and listening to it sets the stage for your brain and your body to begin to recover and to begin to shift. If we never put ourselves in those situations where pleasure could come, it'll be a lot harder for our brains to experience that. Another key to moving through the experience of anhedonia is to stop waiting until you feel motivated to begin. So, this may be one of the more important ideas in today's episode. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. I'll say that again. Motivation often follows action. We're used to flipping them. We're used to thinking action comes out of motivation. But instead, we want to consider the idea that just doing the things, so going for that walk, doing that task, hanging out with somebody, is the platform to increasing our following motivation. When people feel anhedonic, they frequently wait for the desire to return before taking action. I see people get caught in this all the time, and it's a really difficult shift to make because, of course, we want to feel better before we do the things, because then it's easier to do the things. Of course, doing the things when we don't feel good is harder, But action itself is often what starts to reactivate our motivation and also can lead to that increased sense of pleasure and connection to whatever it is that we're doing. So don't think of motivation like a lightning bolt, but more like a campfire. So you need to just keep nurturing those small flames, those small sparks until it starts to build into something bigger. Another way to keep moving through anhedonia is connection. Connection is one of the most powerful antidotes to emotional numbness. Not because it magically fixes everything, but because humans regulate our emotions together. So while anhedonia tells you to withdraw, isolate, and disappear, gentle connection can actually be deeply protective. Being around other people in different mood states with different energy, different points of conversation, different things to focus on is really good for our brains. It introduces us to diversity and may start to spark some of those flames in that campfire, which lead to that general shifting within ourselves. So sometimes healing begins with belonging long before our experience of joy returns, but it can really help in that process. If you've been experiencing anhedonia for weeks, months, for persistent periods of time, and this episode has sparked you to be aware of what may be going on for you, but now not knowing where it's coming from, this can be a time to seek out some support and intervention, whether from a physical health physician or from a mental health practitioner, to just help you explore any underlying causes and start to recommend appropriate treatment based on you and your context. So, therapy can be helpful. Lifestyle changes can be helpful. Sometimes medication can be helpful. And often it's a combination of several approaches, several different things that you're doing to look after yourself. There's no single path to health and wellness, and there doesn't need to be. Life is about diversity, and so is health. So if life feels meh right now, if joy feels distant, if everything seems muted and gray, I want to leave you with this thought that the absence of pleasure is not the absence of possibility. Anhedonia can convince you that nothing matters because nothing feels rewarding. But feelings are not always accurate forecasts of the future. Many people who have experienced profound emotional numbness find their way back to laughter, connection, curiosity, purpose, and enjoyment. And even in the present, there can still be meaning. There's still life. There's still relationships. There's still things that are happening that are part of your experience. Be patient, take care of yourself, and remember, recovery doesn't always arrive as a breakthrough. It usually arrives as a series of tiny returns. And it's okay to notice these as they're coming. It's also okay if you don't notice them until they build up and there's more of them so that they're obvious. Your job is simply to stay in relationship with yourself and your life long enough for feeling to find its way back and to just keep cultivating that moment by moment and step by step. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode resonated for you, and I hope you'll check out past episodes of our podcast as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to the Sana Psychological Podcast. We're glad you joined us today. For more resources, free tools, or to book a session with our team, visit sanapsychological.com. Your mental health is our priority. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take good care.